Hello and welcome to the Baby Loss Podcast with me, Gabriella Austin. This podcast is for parents like myself to share their story around baby loss and miscarriage. Today I am joined by Gemma, who tells the story of her son Oscar. Gemma is the founder of Oscar's Wish Foundation, which she created after the loss of her son Oscar at 26 weeks pregnant. Oscar's Wish Foundation is a charity offering bereavement support to families in Sussex and throughout the UK. They are run solely on volunteers who work tirelessly to meet the demand for support, advice, resources and counselling after the loss of a baby. Baby loss is unfortunately more common than people think, and certainly more common than discussed. Whilst I would like to raise awareness around this taboo subject, my main aim is to provide parents with a safe place to talk about their babies, wherever they may be in their journey. 2020 was a year like no other. Loneliness set in for many, bringing back feelings and memories of loss. There is no judgment here, and every journey is different. Welcome to 2021, where we tell the stories of our babies gone too soon. Trigger warning for this episode: discussion on baby loss, miscarriage, and contains explicit content. Hello.
Hello, how are you?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. Happy Sunday.
Yes, you too.
Okay, so ready when you are to listen to Oscar's story.
Lovely, thank you. So, Oscar's my little boy who I had in November 2014. I was just a regular, normal person going to work, going about my business. I am a teacher, so was lecturing in a college, and I was also private nannying as well because my job was at risk of redundancy, so I job shared to keep my job. And love working with teenagers. Would teach 16-year-olds who were quite a challenge, but a lot of fun. And I taught them the earliest qualifications. So my life has always been surrounded with children, other people's children, and I fell pregnant with Oscar. I didn't feel well at all from the beginning. Something just didn't feel 100% right. I was very, very sick. When I say 100% right, I didn't know what pregnancy felt like because I'd never been pregnant before. So for me, it just felt very like, I just kept thinking, oh, how do people enjoy this? And I feel awful saying that, but I was so sick, so sick. And I just always had this odd feeling, you know, when you're coming down with a bug and you just know you're coming down with something because you just have that sense, that odd feeling. It was like that the whole time. And I just realised that was what pregnancy was like for me. And I'd be in my classroom with my students, my 16-year-olds, and have to have the bin next to me because I couldn't leap over the tables quick enough to get to the toilets. That's how sick I was. And although work had said, look, you really need to stop, I was determined to carry on. I also ran a voluntary youth project at the time, which I absolutely loved. And it was a horrible experience for them because I just couldn't do anything with them. But again, I'd be vomiting all over, but it was just awful. Anyway, I got to 16 weeks and the sickness ramped up a bit, and I joined some groups on Facebook. Just surely you're not supposed to be this sick. My mum had never been this sick. No one I knew had ever been this sick. And I went to the doctors, and he was ready to sign me off. He was ready to say, look, you just need to get home and rest. I was like, I can't rest. I've got all these things to do. I've got all these people that rely on me. I can't let them down. And so I pushed through, and it was hard. And I got to, I was also studying in the evenings as well. So I'd go on a Wednesday evening to Crawley College and study the final part of my teaching qualification. And I wouldn't get home until 10:30. And I remember this one particular Wednesday evening, I'd really felt ill during the day. I'd not been able to eat anything because I'd just been sick. And I got into college and I was sat there, and I remember the lecturer just saying, you don't look well, are you all right? And I was like, no, yeah, I'm fine. On the drive home, just something didn't feel right at all. So I literally went home, showered, got into bed. And the next morning I woke up and I was bleeding. I would have been probably about 17, almost 18 weeks at that point. Still being really sick, and I just, something just didn't feel right. And obviously I panicked, so I phoned the hospital and said I'm bleeding, and obviously they asked lots of questions, and they're like, right, okay, just keep an eye on it, and take some paracetamol for your headache, and just keep in touch. So obviously went to college, taught my students, had a really full-on day that day, and I just remember saying to the students, I'm really sorry, I'm sitting down to teach you today, I just cannot stand, I just feel too weak.
Mm-hmm.
Got home that evening about 7, and I texted my best friend and I just said, look, you've got a little girl, you have been pregnant, you know what it feels like. Is this right that I'm being this sick and bleeding? And she said, no, you need to get to hospital now, I'll come pick you up. So I said, no, it's okay, I'm fine. Incredibly independent. And actually, since leaving hospital, I realised I don't need to be independent and I can ask people for help. But that's one of probably the only positive things that have come out of it. But I drove to hers and I pulled over twice to be sick. Oh, sorry, not a very nice conversation for you guys to be listening to. And I got to her house and she was like, you really don't look well. Zoomed to PRH in Hayward Heath and went straight up to triage, and they got me all hooked up and what have you. And they said they needed to do an internal scan. At the time, I didn't realise the lady doing the internal scan was not fully trained. I only realised that with hindsight afterwards when I really, really went through all my notes. I obviously obliged, and I said, please just be careful because I'm sure you're not supposed to be doing this. Didn't realise internal scans were allowed when you're pregnant. I just thought that no one went near that area, and that was that until the baby came out. But naivety. And she was like, yeah, everything's fine. You have a polyp. You have a cervical polyp. And I was like, well, what's that? And the registrar there said, it's more than likely benign, but they're just small growths that would grow on the ovaries. I was like, okay, fine. Is it going to be a problem for the baby? And they were like, no, it should be fine. It should be fine, but that's probably what's bleeding. So I was like, oh, okay, well, that makes sense. And then I thought afterwards, well, if this tiny little polyp is causing this much blood, surely that's not right, because there was obviously quite a considerable amount. And went home, they gave me an anti-sickness, went home, and they just said, just be really careful. So carried on. And then I went to college the following Wednesday evening, and I got back and I was too exhausted, absolutely exhausted, couldn't wait to get into bed. I got into bed in my clothes. That's how tired I was, and I would never do that. It's really disgusting. But I got into bed in my clothes, and I literally, obviously by this point I had quite a bump, and I had quite bad back pain. And I remember just very carefully, almost like shunting myself and my bump over. And as I went over, one leg obviously kind of went over before the other, and I just felt this incredible gush. And I was just like, oh my gosh, I've wet myself. I'm 30 years old and I've wet myself. Like, what is going on? And I just remember thinking, it's still coming. Like, what is going on? The first thing was, oh my gosh, my bed. I've spent a fortune. I saved up so much money for my bed. My mattress is going to be ruined. And then I looked and I was like, okay, there's obviously bleeding as well. So very carefully got up, went to the bathroom, and it was still gushing. Flooded my bathroom floor. And I just remember this sensation on my fingers, and I thought, that doesn't feel like wee. Not that I've ever felt wee to know what it feels like, but there was just something telling me that wasn't wee. And then I sat down on the toilet and had a wee, and I was like, now I know that was
that's wee. Yeah.
And I was like, hang on, I think that's my waters. So I burst into tears, phoned the hospital and just said, I think my waters are broken. And they were like, how many weeks are you? And I was like, nearly 19 weeks. And they were like, okay, you need to come in. So I went in and again had another internal, and again by the same lady, who again I didn't realise was not necessarily trained. I think she was in training. And she was explaining to the registrar what she could see and what have you, and they said, okay, it sounds like your backwaters have got. Didn't know you had front and backwaters. I just thought you just had water, amniotic fluid. So she was like, okay, what it looks like is that there could be a tear in your amniotic sac, which is causing the fluid to come out. Obviously, this isn't good because baby needs the fluid to grow and develop. We want you to go home, we want you to rest, and we'll monitor you and see what's happening. Give us a call tomorrow. So absolutely petrified. I just remember thinking, what is it you're actually telling me here? I don't understand. You're telling me to go home and rest.
Yeah.
So it can't be that bad because you keep me in, surely. The ward looked quite empty, so it wasn't as if they had no room or no beds. So I went home and rested. Phoned work and said I'm not coming in. Didn't tell them too much about what was going on, but just said things had some complications. And again, started being really, really sick. Couldn't eat, so my iron levels. I'm vegetarian as well, so I had no iron in my body. I was just exhausted, just wanted to sleep all the time. And I was due to go in a couple of days for my 20-week scan. So my mum came along to that with me. And I remember sitting there thinking, well, I don't feel any different to how I felt all the way through. I've been really sick all the way through. Obviously, now I know my home waters have gone, which I didn't even know I had. So let's hopefully find out the sex of the baby today. I'm 20 weeks. Feeling really good about it, although feeling ill. I'm feeling good about the fact that I'm going to find out today. So we went in and really positive. The sonographer was really positive, and I laid down and my mum held my hand. She was like, I'm just so excited. My eldest daughter, so excited, such a lovely moment. And my granddad turned up and walked in the room. I can't believe they let him in, but he came in and he was like, I just have to be here. I have to be here for this moment. My first grandchild, I've got to be here. And so sonographer put the jelly on and started scanning, and it just felt a bit longer. It was taking a bit longer than it had at my 12-week scan. Didn't think anything of it. And then I looked across at my mum, like really happy and smiling, and I could just see this slight look of concern, only slight to start with. And then the sonographer got up and she said, I'll be back in a minute.
Oh, I hate
that.
And
my mum looked at me and looked at my granddad, and the look between them, the gaze between them was like I wasn't invited into that look kind of thing. It was almost like they knew something I didn't know. Obviously, the sonographer had left the room at that point, so I couldn't even see anything on the screen. And I remember as I looked across my mum, her turning the screen slightly away from me. So almost as if to hide something.
Mm-hmm.
She came back in with the doctor probably about, I felt like a lifetime, but probably 5 or 6 minutes. And he said, Gemma, we need you to get dressed and you need to come upstairs. We need to have a chat. Like, what's wrong? What's wrong with my baby? What's wrong with me? Like, is something? They're like, okay, we'll go upstairs, we'll have a chat. Do you want a cup of tea or anything? So we got upstairs and they took me into triage. Took me into and pulled the curtain round, and sat on the bed with my mum, and my granddad was just pacing up and down. My mum was holding my hand like she used to hold it when I was a little girl. You know that grip they hold you when you're about to cross the road. It just gets that little bit firmer.
Yes.
And they asked me to lay on the bed, and the doctor said, if I remember rightly, I think he was Greek. I love the Greek accent, and I just remember thinking, I just love the way you speak. Talk to me. I just love the way you speak. And he, I think I got taken away with the sound of his voice and not what he was saying, because it didn't hit me at first. And he said, I'm really sorry, your baby is going to be born within the next 48 hours and chances are he will die. And I think at that moment in time, I was thinking, I just like the sound of your voice, like, oh, this bed's really comfy. I wasn't even hearing what he was saying, the reality. And he said, do you understand what that means? And I think time really froze for quite a period of time. And I remember feeling like I was underwater, and my mum was going, Gemma. And I could hear her and I could see her, but I couldn't hear her, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And my granddad just let out this gasp and had to leave the curtain, leave the room, leave the cubicle.
Mm-hmm.
And I just remember my mum wanting to hug me, and I pushed her away, and I just said, no, what did you just say? And he said, your baby is not going to survive, and it's likely you will go into labour within 24 to 48 hours. Oh, okay, so right. Even now, as I'm saying it, I can't even imagine what it was like for him to have to tell me that. But I remember thinking, what do I do now? He said, we need to go home. I would suggest you were with someone. Obviously, I was going to be parenting Oscar on my own. So he suggested that I stayed with my mum, or my siblings came to stay with me. And he said, as soon as you feel like you've gone into labour, you need to come in. And I was like, well, what's actually happened? How do you know this? What's telling you that this is what's going to happen? And he said that my waters had completely gone. It wasn't just my hindwaters. So although I hadn't felt any more gushes or any more liquid since when I went in the first time, he said that I had no water surrounding my baby. So Oscar effectively was in the amniotic sac with no fluid. So that is like a baby, a fetus, being in a deflated balloon. He said that I needed to have a scan so they could work out roughly where the tear was, but it was almost certain that the amniotic sac had such a tear in it that it couldn't hold any more fluid. So it seems weird now to think back to how I was feeling at the time, but I just remember I literally went home and I got into my bed, in my pajamas, went to bed, and I set my laptop up and I just started researching like what had happened to me, because they didn't give me any terminology at the time. They didn't give me any phrases that I could use. So I was Googling things like tear in amniotic sac, my baby's going to die, what do I do? Just key words and key phrases, and just kind of took solace in the internet, because I didn't know anyone else this had happened to.
No.
And I didn't even know this could happen. I thought you went into labour when your waters are broken, you went to hospital and had your baby. That's all I did.
You brought your baby home.
Yeah, you brought your baby home. And so I found out through research that what had actually happened was something, and I can never pronounce this properly, but it's called SROM, and it's SRROM, which means spontaneous rupture of membranes.
Okay.
So basically the membrane surrounding him had ruptured spontaneously. Now, all of the stories that I was looking at and reading made me think, I'd pause this because I've worked too hard, I've been doing too much, I shouldn't have been going off to study after a full day at work when I'm this early on in my pregnancy. I was also I'd also set up a childcare agency, so I was doing a lot of evening childcare, and I wasn't getting home till 2-3 o'clock in the morning at the weekends, and then up again early to start work again. So I just kept thinking, I paused this, it's my fault. And it's only on the next appointment to the hospital where I had a scan, and they worked out that the tear was actually at the kind of the top and the side of my sac. And the nurse was really great. She did say, you do realise that your amniotic sac can potentially fuse together and kind of heal, and that you could try to get that sac to fill. And I kept thinking, well, surely they can give me an injection, and if I can have IV fluids in my arm, why can't I have IV fluids into or some kind of fluid, not IV fluids, but some kind of fluid into the amniotic sac to fill it back up again? Why is there not an operation they can do to fuse the sac? And now, bearing in mind what the sac is made of, the amniotic sac is made of, they were just illogical thoughts that my brain was thinking, well, you have to save my baby.
Yeah.
A week went on and I'd had this scan, they worked out where it was, and the doctor said, you need to be on bed rest, you need to be tilted upright. By upright I mean head down, legs up. If you want to give this baby a chance, you're still currently pregnant, his heart's still beating, he is producing amniotic fluid, so he was drinking the tiny, I think I had, so where the amniotic sac had burst effectively, and it had shrunk, it had created like a pool of fluid where he was obviously still drinking and weeing it, and there was almost like a deflated balloon with like just a pool at the bottom, and I had I can't remember the exact measurements, but I think I had at one point like 1.2 centimeters of fluid. Now, bearing in mind your whole amniotic sac is normally full of fluid, that was nothing and was minimal, but it was enough to keep him alive. So I literally did exactly what they said. I went home, I was tilted upright. I did that for 2 days, and I just phoned the hospital and I said, I need to be in the hospital. And they were like, yes, you do.
Yeah.
So I was then in hospital until I was 25 plus 4, on bed rest. I didn't move. I literally did not move. I stayed in my bed like this, up, kind of tilted upright. If visitors came in, they had to stand up and look over me because I couldn't move. My mum would come in and shave my legs because I still felt I needed that dignity. Yeah, it was just, it was what I wanted to do. And every day the consultant came in. I think they came in every other day to see me, because I was then put in a private room on labour and delivery, on maternity at PRH. I could hear babies crying. I could hear and see new dads and family members coming in with their amazing balloons. Congratulations on the birth of your baby. The only time my door opened or closed was when the doctor came in to speak to me, or I had a visitor. If it wasn't for my phone, I think I would have gone stir crazy, because it meant that I could have access to the outside world.
Yeah.
But I just knew this is what I needed to do. And I remember this one particular doctor, who was my consultant at the time, coming in, and every single time she came in, all she came in armed with was statistics about how he would be disabled, he would be deformed, he wouldn't be growing. They were surprised that he was even growing and developing, and still his heart was beating at this stage. And she offered me a termination on, I couldn't tell you how many occasions. I asked her not to come in my room ever again, and to allow my baby and my body to choose what happened next, because I knew the odds. I wasn't stupid.
Yes.
I knew what they were telling me, but I wasn't in a position to make a decision where I wanted to make that choice of following their advice with regards to a termination. That wasn't an option for me, and I wanted to let my body choose, and I wanted to let my baby choose what was going to happen. And I remember I then started seeing another doctor, Dr. Jala, who was just incredible, and he would bounce in my room, and he almost brought a ray of sunshine as he came in. He was just this upbeat, lovely. He came in, he clapped his hands, he was really jolly, and he'd ask to sit on the bed, and then he'd make a joke about he couldn't because he'd catapult me out because of the position I was in, and just a really lovely guy. And he would always crack a comment about the fact that my face was bright red because I had head rush and all this kind of stuff. Really nice guy, and he just made me smile. And he said, we appreciate what you are choosing to do. We're going to be honest, we don't get many situations where families have the spontaneous rupture of membranes and the baby survives, the baby carries on. So we're at a bit of a kind of conundrum really as to what's going on in there. So we want to get you scanned every other day. So I'd be wheeled down to have another scan, and they're like, yeah, he's still growing, he's still. So I got to 25 plus 5, 25 plus 5, and they were like, well, you are reacting really well to the antibiotics, you haven't got any infections, your markers are fine, your bloods are fine. We're going to send you home just because you can relax a bit more at home, and you must be bored out of your brains here, being in a little room on your own. And so they sent me home. I had to obviously go in a wheelchair to the car, and then park right outside my house. So I literally had a tiny bit to walk straight into bed again. And I was home for a day, and then the sickness started, and I just did not feel well at all. And I remember making myself a jacket potato, because I had really weird cravings for potato and satsumas. But it wasn't eating the potato, it was making mash. I had to make mash from scratch. And the making of it. So by the time I then went back into hospital, I had a freezer full. I had a year's supply of mashed potato ready for when I came home, because of course that's what you do. And what's it, cheesy what's it, and that was the only thing that didn't make me sick. And I remember just thinking, I've got a focus here, so that's fine. The making of the mashed potato is enough of a focus, and I'd sit down at my hob, wait for my potatoes to boil, then I'd mash them because I wasn't allowed to stand up. But I hadn't leaked anymore. There had been no more amniotic fluid. So they were gauging from the scans that the tear had fused, and because I was being scanned every other day, I had more and more fluid, which was great because it was increasing, which gave me more hope. So I went home. I was literally home, and can't exactly remember. It was either 1 or 2 days, and I phoned the hospital and said, I'm not feeling right. I'm really not feeling right. And they had me straight back in again.
Yeah.
So I went back in. They put me on another course of antibiotics. I went home, and I think I had IV antibiotics. Then I went home, and I was home literally a matter of hours, and I knew something wasn't right. And I didn't want to be in my bed, so I went and sat on my sofa, which was a recliner. And I remember watching The Real Housewives or something or other, or Dinner Date or something. And I remember thinking, I'm just gonna sit here for a minute. I've got a bit of a headache. Well, I've got quite a headache. I'm gonna phone the hospital, just see what they say, because I might need to go back in. And they said, oh, that was it. I'd been, and there had been some blood in it. And they said, look, just take some paracetamol, try and have a sleep. She must not been sleeping well, and then just give us a call. And I literally sat down on the sofa, no word of a lie. I downed these paracetamol, and he was going mad in my stomach, like somersaults to the point where I physically thought I was going to vomit because they were so intense.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you're in the car and you go over a really intense hill really fast, that or a roller coaster, that dropping feeling. And at the time, I didn't think anything about it. I was like, oh, you're very active, you know, you're very, very active. I felt lots of movement from very early on, but something didn't feel right. And I thought, I'm just going to try and go to sleep because I don't like this feeling of nauseous, because I'm not now being sick, but I'm feeling it. So I took this paracetamol and I went for a nap. And I don't know how long I was asleep, but the TV was still on. And when I woke up, it had turned on to something else. So it must have been probably half an hour, 40 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember as I opened my eyes, I physically reached for the air, almost as if to grab something. And I just remember saying, no, don't leave me, don't leave me. And I was like, oh my God, I'm dreaming. That's really weird. Like, wake up properly, wake up, have a drink. Yeah, I can feel him moving. Can I feel him moving? Another drink. And I'd been drinking Diet Coke to give me some energy, because obviously where I'd been so poorly, it was just giving me just enough energy to keep my sugar levels topped up. And I kept thinking, drinking it, I'm not really feeling anything. Maybe he's asleep. Then I got up to go to the toilet, and I knew I'd gone into labour. The pain was beyond intense, to the point where I was then calling on the floor to my front door to get to my neighbour, to ask her to just help me.
Yeah.
And I remember not being able to reach the door handle, but like, I am going to get out of this door. And I managed to crawl into the concierge bit, and she was just coming in with her shopping. She was like, oh, Gemma, what's wrong? And I was like, I'm in labour, the baby's coming. And I just remember that look on her face, as if to say, but you're not ready yet. Like, you're not full term. This isn't right. And bless her, she was about 80, and she hadn't really seen me much because I'd been in hospital. And bless her, she'd been keeping an eye on my house and on my apartment. And I just remember her saying, where's your phone? And she phoned my mum, and my mum was there within minutes. And I phoned the Trevor Mann baby unit, because one of the things that the lovely sunshine doctor, I call him Dr. Ajala, had said to me is that if you're choosing to go down this route and your baby's clearly still growing, still alive, he will be cared for in the Trevor Mann baby unit, because the chances are you won't make it to term. So I had a virtual tour of the Travel Man Baby unit so that I was aware of what to expect.
Yeah.
I'd virtually met some of the team, and I felt quite comforted that when my baby did come, I didn't know who was the little boy at this point, but when my baby did come, he was going to go to the Travel Man Baby unit. He'd be cared for there. I know how amazing they are.
Yeah.
And it would be okay. He'd be fine. Didn't then click that I'm in labour now, which means he's coming. So my mum got me in the car, and I remember phoning the Travel Man Baby unit and saying, we're on our way. I'm 26 weeks pregnant. Like, what do I do? What's the process when I get to you? And they said, I'm really sorry, we've got no space. We're full. We don't have any room for any more babies. We've got no more incubators. And I just remember like screaming because I was in so much pain in labour, trying to hold on to the the handle at the top of the door, which no one really understands what that's for. Like holding on to it with both hands, like shouting at them.
It's for labour.
Pardon?
It's for labour.
Yeah, it is for labour. Yeah,
it's for when you're driving your wife to the hospital. It's
yeah. And I remember my mum just giving me lots of reassurance, and she was saying, "What are they saying? What are they saying?" And they said, you're going to have to go to Southampton because that's the closest place to here that's got the facilities that we have. And I just remember saying, I haven't got time to get to Southampton. My baby's coming. I can feel him there or her there. And I was like, Southampton is hours away. I lived in Buxted, so that's near Uckfield. And to get to Brighton, I think we got there in like 20 minutes. We didn't break any speed limits.
No,
but we got there,
not.
and my mum was like, we haven't got time to get to Southampton. That's over 2.5 hours away. You're going to Brighton. They'll have to. So I just said to them, I'm still coming, and then hung up. We got to Brighton and to buy the Alex, and the tower block that I needed to go into, obviously, was just too much of a challenge. And I remember my mum literally opening the door and saying, get out and lean up against that wall. I'm going to abandon the car over there. I haven't got time to park it, and I'll take you up. And in the process of her helping me out of the car to then move the car out of the way, I just collapsed on the floor. Where I'd not eaten for so many months, and I had been so sick, I just had no strength. And I just remember collapsing on the floor. And then the next thing, hearing my mum scream, and I could hear her even though I couldn't see her. And then a porter came and scooped me up into a wheelchair. And then I just remember literally my head being flipped back and just seeing the rows and rows and rows of hospital lights. The feeling of going up in the lift and then being in a private room. And then after that, it was all a bit of a blur, really. I had a doctor come in and was talking to me about what was happening, but I was in full-blown labour. I just wanted to push, and I was just like, I don't want anyone else here. I just want my mum. My brother had turned up, and my sister was there at that point, and they were like, we've got to scan you. We need to know what's going on. Excuse me. You're obviously not at the point where you should be giving birth, so we need to check what's going on. And they brought in a scanning machine. Turned the scanning machine on. Obviously, it hadn't been being used before, so it needed to warm up a little bit. And they scanned me, and everyone in the room knew that his heart had stopped beating. And I didn't even feel like I was there. If that makes sense. Like it was almost like I was looking in on me.
Yeah.
And I was so focused on breathing and the pain that I didn't hear what they were saying. And I just screamed and screamed and screamed and just said, you're lying, stop playing tricks on me, I just want to wake up. And I felt like I was in a dream and a nightmare. And I just said to the doctor, get away from me, I don't want you running with anywhere near me, I want a second opinion. Now this is all very surreal because I'm not like that as a person. I am the most chilled, polite, nice person, and I just turned into this protective, crazed woman. Like, what do you mean you're telling me my baby's heart stopped beating? What? Like, no way. So I asked for a second doctor and a second doctor's opinion, and they brought in a second machine because I was adamant that the machine was wrong. There was something wrong with the machine. So I remember them setting this machine up, waiting for it to warm up, and that time just feeling like it was days, like I was waiting for days. Again, still in labour, still breathing, just wanting to push and just saying, I just need to get my baby out. And they scanned me, and there was just a moment of silence, which was probably only a minute, but felt like a lifetime. And I just looked at the screen and there was nothing. He was just lying there. I could see him very faintly, because where I had no amniotic fluid, you couldn't see the scan very well, because it's the amniotic fluid that creates the shadowed effect, almost the white element of seeing the baby on the screen. And I just remember thinking, it's real, what they're saying is true. And my mum's crying, my brother was crying, my sister was crying. And then I just went into autopilot, and I was like, well, I need to give birth to him, he's coming, or she. I still didn't know at this stage what sex my baby was. And I just need the baby here now. So just stayed so focused on giving birth. My heart was absolutely broken, but I didn't let that trigger at the time. I was just like, I've got a job, this is what I've got to do, I've got to bring him into the world, or her into the world. And my brother rubbed my back so intensely for hours. My mum held my hand, my sister rubbed my feet, and I pushed and pushed and pushed, and he got a bit stuck, but he did come out, and there was obviously all the usual, oh my gosh, it's a boy, but there was no pride, there were no there wasn't that anticipation of, oh my gosh, that excitement. It was almost like watching a bouncy castle deflate really slowly, and like, well, what now? And then they gave me an injection to birth the placenta. I vomited horrendously all the way through my pregnancy, all the way through my labour. There's a common theme here. And literally after my placenta came out, I couldn't hold him because my body went into such shock. You know, have you ever been so cold that you shake so violently and you cannot figure out, your body cannot figure out how you're going to stop shaking? I went into that almost like a hypothermic state, and they were putting blankets and blankets and blankets on me. And although I was sweating, I was shaking so much they had to move my bed away from the wall because the railings were hitting the wall. So, and I can only liken that to that flight mode, that fight or flight mode, where my body had gone into such a state of trauma that my body couldn't cope. So my mum was the first person to hold Oscar, and they wrapped him in a blanket, and they popped his little hat on, and I could hear them cooing and talking about him, and my mum saying, the little boy, you've had a little boy, do you want to look at him? And I remember just wanting to say, yes, I want him given to me, but I was just so out of my own body, like shaking so violently that I didn't know what was happening. So it was a good couple of hours. I mean, he was born at 12:40 in the morning of the 4th of November. And I don't think I held him for a couple of hours because my body, I mean, again, we bled horrendously and hemorrhaged really badly and was quite poorly. So I just then remember sleeping and thinking, I just need to be holding him. I need him on me. I want him. If he's on me, then I can bring him back to life. He'll be alive. When I wake up, it'll be fine. So obviously they put him on me while I was asleep. And I snuggled with him, even though I didn't know that was what I was doing because I was so out of it at that point. And I remember waking up early hours in the morning and just wanting to sit in the chair. And my sister was on, have you seen the drop mattresses that they use? So if you go into labour randomly somewhere in the hospital and they need to shove a mattress under you, it's like a drop mattress that they just, as like a makeshift bed on the floor. So my sister was sleeping on that. There wasn't obviously a bed for her, so she was sleeping on that. And I remember waking her up and just saying, you know, that I've had a boy, he's beautiful. And she was like, I know, I've been here the whole time. And I was like, no, you haven't. Like, I have. And I things come back every now and then, and I think, was that real? Did that actually happen? Because I can't remember, like my brain's blocked certain things out. So we sat, we looked at him, we looked out over Brighton, and how beautifully calm it was. All you could see were the lights, the odd car going up and down the road, and it was just a moment of surreal. Oh my gosh, I'm a mum. My son is here. And then they came and took him to the mortuary and said, we need to take him now. He needs to be cooled. His body needs to be at a certain temperature so that he doesn't deteriorate. And I remember thinking that's okay, that's fine, that's what needs to happen. Again, I was in that logical state, but giving him to them was just like the most unnatural feeling of, I'm giving someone else my baby, and he's not going to be with me, and how long am I going to have with him, and what's going to happen next? So he went off. I knew that's what needed to happen, and because my sister was with me, I trusted her when she said he needs to go. He'll be back, don't worry. He just needs to go, and you can have him back as soon as you're ready. And I was like, can I have him back in 10 minutes? And they're like, well, it needs to be a couple of hours really. So off he went, and I had the best tasting cup of tea in my whole entire life, and the best tasting piece of toast with jam in my whole entire life. Half a banana and some chocolate buttons, which tasted out of this world because I'd not eaten for 6 months. And I just remember thinking, I'm a mum, like my baby's here. And I wasn't even aware at that point that he wasn't alive. So after they'd done the breakfast round, obviously they came and gave me my meds and topped me up with everything that I was having at the time. And I just said, I'd like him back now, please. I want to see my son. And then obviously they have their protocols. They have to go through the forms they fill in, etc., everything they have to go through. So they came and they did that while I held him. And I held him for 12 hours. And it was just the most incredible 12 hours ever that I will cherish. My mum popped back up. We all had some family photos with him, which was so natural at the time, and I cherished so much. And again, my head just hadn't clicked that he wasn't alive, because he looked asleep. And obviously newborns do sleep for long periods of time. But yes, Oscar was here, my little boy, Oscar Jensen Stephen Pivot. I named him after my dad's name was Stephen, so I named him after him as a middle name, and he just looked like an Oscar, and just completed my world, even though my world had and was starting to fall apart. But
do you mind if I just add a few tiny little things to the end, because of some things that you were saying? I just think, oh yeah, I remember that sort of like happening to me as well. When so you said that you were sort of like crawling to out of the door to get to your neighbour. So I was in the lounge, so it must have been with my second miscarriage, and it was a very, very, very painful. And I was just on my hands and knees because I couldn't sit down, and I wanted to get to the bathroom, but I couldn't walk. I had to crawl, and I just remember that you can't believe that you're in that much pain. You can't believe that it's happening to you. I couldn't believe I couldn't stand up. Like, what is wrong with you? Why can't you just stand up? I mean, I say quite a lot of the time, like, come on, Gab, just get a grip. Like, you need to do it. But and when you said that, I obviously trying to imagine your story and be there. And there were a few times where I was going back to me, and sort of I remember crawling down my hallway to get to the bathroom.
There's a sense of like, it was almost crippling, like just hearing you say then, like, come on, Gab, pull yourself together. I remember saying that to myself, like, why can't I get up? Why can I not physically? I literally did not have the strength to physically get up. Now, had someone been there with me, I'm sure they would have tried to help me up. But it was almost like a really debilitating feeling of, I can't walk. I literally cannot walk. Crawling is my only option. And I'm not willing to lay down and just stay here. I've got to get out that door.
So another thing, that just took me back to her labour as well, when you were talking about Oscar, is they said to you, do you understand what's happening? Do you know what I mean? Or like a phrase like that. And I heard that quite a few times. And I just, do you understand what that means? Or do you understand what's going to happen? And it's just
no, I don't.
It's a
understand.
horrible word. Such a shit question.
Yeah.
You're like, well, I mean, I could take an educated guess.
Yeah.
I think I know what that means, but why? That's not what I wanted to hear, but
No.
it's what you're telling me.
Yeah.
So, and also with that as well, Isabella's, even though I now realise I was in labour all day, but managed to sort of just get around London and come home, and it wasn't until I got home where I thought, oh, I think I'm actually in labour. I need to sort of stop ignoring this now, because I had been to the hospital and they told me that it was probably like ligament stretching and stuff like that. And also I hadn't been pregnant before, so it was all I had, but I hadn't got this far, so it was new to my body. Like this experience, my body hadn't been through it before. But when we got to the hospital, it sped up very quickly, and I just knew that I needed to just focus and just give birth to my child, because that's what you have to do. Like you, I was very sad, and inside I was screaming, but I was very quiet throughout the whole process, apart from silent tears, obviously. But inside I was just howling at howling, but I was very like, no, this is what you need to do. You need to just gather your thoughts. You need to just concentrate and relax, and you're going to give birth, and the birth's going to be fine, because you can be in control of this bit. This is what you have to do, and this is what your body's going to do. And we didn't know if we were having a boy or a girl either. So the whole time there was that as well. Like, I mean, I thought I was having a boy. So I was telling myself I'm going to meet my son. and then she came out, and obviously, as I've said before, I was just like, oh, mummy, so sorry, I thought that you were a boy. And but obviously, I mean, like, I spoke to the bump, but definitely as a boy and not as a girl. And I used to be, I don't really like attending baby showers. I never had. This was, way before any of this. I just thought, no, you just need to wait till your baby's here, and see what, who your baby looks like, and then name your baby. And that's just always been my personal opinion. However, now I think that if you can find out the sex of your baby, or if I had known that she was a girl, that we might have had a different relationship.
Right.
And I would have had longer with her, as Isabella, as my daughter, than time with my baby. Does that make sense?
Yes, total sense.
Yeah, definitely. And as soon as anyone gets pregnant now, I think find out, because it just be, you need to know and spend. I do. I hate admitting it, but I do. I just think if I'd known she was a girl, I would have had more time with my daughter. But I did have time with her. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. That's so precious.
Yeah,
there's so many people that recognise that feeling. So many people that recognise that feeling, and whether that would change for them going forward, like when they find out, when they announce pregnancies, that urge to say, please just find out what you're having. I totally recognise that.
Like when you said that you were drinking your Diet Coke, like I would drink, and I mean like an ice cold glass of water, like to where it actually hurt my teeth, and I'd sort of have to, I sit in a chair and have a little sip of the water, and then a couple of seconds later I'd feel her move in there. So it was nice. But is it a shame that I didn't know she was a girl? Maybe, but then maybe that makes her more special and precious, because she was a surprise in so many different ways.
Yeah.
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 Maybe.
No, I hear that. Definitely hear that. And I think I've always dreamed of that moment of when they announce like it's a girl or it's a boy. And obviously it wasn't like that as such, but it was the moment I found out that I was carrying. And I believe at that point that's when I really, I mean, I felt like I bonded with my bump, but again, I felt like I was talking to my bump and my belly, and not knowing that baby inside could hear. And I felt I bonded more in that 12 hours with my son as opposed to feeling like they were my baby. And I just want to now going forward make a lifetime of memories, whether it be how I decorate his forever garden, how we honour him at Christmas, milestones, and I will just parent him in a different way.
Yeah, me too. That's yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, my lovely.
Oh no, honestly, thank you very much for talking about Oscar. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for finding the Baby Loss podcast and remembering Oscar. If you would like to be a guest on my podcast and share your baby story, or if you would like your baby loss charity featured, then please get in touch by searching Baby Loss Podcast on Facebook, Instagram and my YouTube channel. To find out more about Gemma and Oscar's Wish Foundation, please go to oscarswishfoundation.co.uk. If you have been affected by today's episode, then please reach out. SANDS can be reached via their website, sands.org.uk, spelt SANDS, their Facebook page and their helpline on 0808 164 3332. If you require immediate help, you can call the Samaritans 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, for free on 116 123. Thank you for listening and see you next time.